William Todd Austin, Pastor Brode's Perry. There are places we consider sanctuaries, where we lower our guard and trust in the safety of routine. The salon chair where we sit defenseless, scissors snipping away as we scroll through our phones. The pastor's living room where spiritual guidance flows as freely as sweet tea. These are the spaces where we believe violence can't touch us, where our daily rituals create invisible shields of normalcy. But on July 11, 2025, in Arlington, Texas, William Todd Austin discovered that success in public spaces offer no protection when Timon Michelle Williams walked into the salon and spa galleria with deadly intent. 6 years earlier, on April 4th, 2019, Pastor Brode's Perry learned that even a man of God isn't safe when Latasha Daniels knocked on his Collierville apartment door. 2 different states, 2 different years, but the same devastating truth. The places we feel safest can become the scenes of our greatest vulnerability. These are the stories of how ordinary spaces became crime scenes, and how the people we trust can become the ones who destroy us. William Todd Austin. As William settled into the stylish chair that March afternoon, he had no idea that someone from his past was about to shatter not just his world, but the lives of everyone present. The woman who had once shared his bed, his business dreams, and given birth to his child was about to make a decision that would end 2 lives in the most public and devastating way possible. Michelle Williams had been more than just William's girlfriend. She was his business partner, the mother of his child, and someone who knew every detail of his daily routine. She knew exactly where he'd be that Tuesday afternoon, just as she knew that their relationship had reached a point of no return. What started as a love story between 2 ambitious entrepreneurs had transformed into something far more dangerous. The same passion that had once fueled their business success had now become a destructive force that neither of them could control. The other clients in the salon continued their conversations, completely unaware that they were about to witness one of the most shocking acts of domestic violence Arlington had ever seen. The stylists continued their work, focused on creating the perfect cuts and styles for their afternoon appointments. William adjusted in his chair, probably thinking about his next business meeting or perhaps the new relationship he'd recently begun. He had made the difficult decision to end things with Michelle, despite their shared history and their child together. Moving forward meant leaving behind not just a romantic relationship, but also a business partnership that had once seemed unbreakable. For Michelle, however, moving forward wasn't an option she was willing to accept. No one could have predicted that this ordinary Tuesday would become a day that would shake the Dallas business community to its core. The credit repair guru who had helped so many people rebuild their financial lives was about to have his own life cut short in the most unexpected and tragic way. As Michelle made her way toward the salon that day, she carried with her not just the pain of a relationship that ended, but also a weapon that would ensure the story would have no happy ending. The woman who had once been William's closest partner was now his greatest threat. The next few minutes would transform a routine haircut appointment into a crime scene, leaving the community in shock and a child without both parents. What happened next would forever change how those present thought about love, obsession, and the thin line between passion and violence. This is a tragic story of William Todd Austin and Michelle Williams, a tale that serves as a stark reminder that sometimes the people closest to us can become our greatest danger.
Sunday, September 22nd, I'm going to be at the grand opening of the Empire Training Institute. Make sure I pull up and support and meet other people that's trying to win just like you. Let's go.
William Todd Austin, a 37-year-old entrepreneur who had built his reputation as Dallas's go-to credit repair expert. William wasn't just any client. He was a kind of success story that inspired others. His credit coaching business had transformed countless financial futures, and his confident demeanor and sharp business acumen had earned him respect throughout the Dallas-Fort Worth area. To those around him, he appeared to have it all: a thriving company, financial freedom, and the kind of lifestyle most people only dream about. But success in business doesn't always translate to peace in personal relationships.
Tonight we're learning new information about a man who was getting his hair cut at a salon when he was shot and killed.
The victim, identified by family and friends as 37-year-old Todd Austin, was getting his hair cut by Dax the barber, a popular Arlington stylist. Dax, who didn't want to go on camera, told us she fired several shots, striking Austin in the chest area. He's been his customer for 12 years and says on his Facebook page that his clients are his extended family.
William Todd Austin represented the American dream in action. At 37 years old, he had built something remarkable from the ground up. A credit repair business that didn't just make money, but genuinely changed people's lives. In a world where financial literacy often feels like a luxury only the wealthy can afford, William made it accessible to everyday people struggling with damaged credit scores and financial setbacks. His journey to success wasn't handed to him on a silver platter. Like many entrepreneurs, William understood the value of hard work and persistence. He recognized that in America, your credit score often determines your access to opportunities. From securing a home loan to starting a business, from getting approved for a car loan to sometimes even landing certain jobs. The credit repair industry can be filled with scammers and get-rich-quick schemes, but William approached it differently. He built his reputation on genuine results and honest communication with his clients. People trusted him because he delivered on his promises. When someone came to him with a credit score in the 400s, crushed by past financial mistakes or circumstances beyond their control, William saw potential where others saw problems. His business model was straightforward but effective. He educated clients about credit reporting, helped them dispute inaccurate information, and provided strategies for rebuilding their financial standing. But more than that, he gave people hope. He showed them that past financial mistakes didn't have to define their future possibilities. William's success made him a prominent figure in the Dallas business community. He wasn't just making money, he was making a difference. His clients often spoke about how his guidance had opened doors they thought were permanently closed. Some were able to buy their first homes. Others could finally get business loans to start their own companies. And many simply gained the financial confidence they'd been lacking for years. But success in business often comes with personal sacrifices, and William's story was no exception. The same drive and ambition that made him successful in his professional life had also led him into a complicated personal relationship that would ultimately cost him everything. His relationship with Michelle Williams had begun like many modern love stories. Two ambitious people who found each other and decided to build something together. Michelle wasn't just his romantic partner. She became deeply involved in his business operations. They shared not only intimate moments, but also business strategies, client information, and future plans. The decision to mix business with romance created a unique dynamic between them. Michelle knew the ins and outs of William's daily schedule, his business practices, and his financial situation. She was present for his successes and witnessed his challenges. In many ways, she was as invested in the business as he was. Their relationship also produced something even more significant than business success. They had a child together. This beautiful addition to their lives created an unbreakable bond between them, regardless of what happened to their romantic relationship. William Todd Austin had built an empire based on second chances and fresh starts. Tragically, he would never get the chance to experience either for himself. The relationship between William Todd Austin and Michelle Williams began with promise and potential. Two driven individuals who found in each other not just romantic compatibility, but also business partnership possibilities. Their connection went beyond typical romantic relationships. They became collaborators in building something larger than themselves. Michelle Williams wasn't simply along for the ride in Williams' business success. She became an integral part of the credit repair company's operations, understanding the intricacies of the business and contributing to its growth. This level of involvement created a unique bond between them, but also established a complicated dynamic that would later prove dangerous. When romantic partners become business partners, the stakes of every disagreement multiply exponentially. The birth of their child added another layer of complexity to their already intricate relationship. Suddenly, they weren't just romantic partners and business associates. They were co-parents with shared responsibility that would last a lifetime. Both William and Michelle were strong-willed individuals with clear ideas about how things should be done. In business, this often worked to their advantage, but in romance, it sometimes created friction. Michelle's investment in the relationship went beyond typical romantic attachment. She had built her life around William and their shared business. Her identity had become intertwined with his success, and her future plans all included him as a central figure. William, meanwhile, began to experience the restlessness that sometimes accompanies achieved success. Having built a thriving business and established financial security, he started to question whether his current personal situation aligned with his evolving vision for his life. Success had given him options, and he began to consider whether those options might include changes to his romantic relationship. Michelle's inability to accept the end of their romantic relationship began to manifest in concerning ways. She may have monitored William's activities, questioned him about his new relationship, or made demands about their future that he was no longer willing to consider. The credit repair guru who had spent his career helping people recover from their worst financial mistakes was about to become the victim of someone who couldn't recover from their worst emotional mistake. The woman who had once been his greatest supporter was now his greatest threat, and neither of them seemed to realize just how dangerous their situation had become. March 11th began like countless other days in William Todd Austin's carefully structured life. As a successful business owner, he maintained routines that helped him manage his multiple responsibilities while staying on top of his professional obligations. His appointment at Salon and Spa Galleria in Arlington was part of his regular self-care routine, the kind of maintenance that successful professionals often schedule to maintain their appearance and confidence. The salon itself was a typical upscale establishment, the kind of place where busy professionals could relax while receiving quality services. Located in a bustling area of Arlington, it served clients who value both convenience and quality. The atmosphere was usually calm and professional, with stylists focused on their craft and clients enjoying a brief respite from their hectic schedules. When William arrived for his appointment that Tuesday afternoon, nothing seemed unusual. He likely exchanged pleasantries with the staff, settled into his stylish chair, and began the familiar routine of getting his hair cut. The salon's other clients continued their own appointments, creating the typical buzz of conversation and activity that characterized a busy afternoon. But Michelle Williams knew exactly where William would be that afternoon. Her arrival at the salon marked the beginning of the end for both of them. The woman who had once been William's closest confidant and business partner now approached him with deadly intentions. The moment Michelle entered the salon with a weapon, the ordinary Tuesday afternoon transformed into every business owner's worst nightmare. The other clients and staff members suddenly found themselves trapped in a situation that none of them had any reason to expect or any training to handle. William's reaction to seeing Michelle with a weapon is difficult to imagine. Did he try to reason with her? Did he attempt to protect the other people in the salon? Did he think about their child and the devastating impact this moment would have on their young life? The terror and confusion he must have experienced in those final moments represents every person's worst fear about someone they once loved becoming someone they should fear. The sound of gunshots in the confined space of the salon created chaos and panic among everyone present. The other clients and staff members suddenly found themselves witnesses to an act of domestic violence that would haunt them for the rest of their lives. The peaceful atmosphere of the salon was shattered by violence that none of them had done anything to provoke or deserve. Michelle's decision to shoot William while he was getting his hair cut demonstrated the calculated nature of her actions. She had chosen a time and place where he would be vulnerable and unable to escape. The public setting also ensured that her actions would be witnessed and that her message, whatever she believed that message to be, would be heard by others.
This is the moment Arlington police officers arrived at the front doors of the Spa Galleria strip mall on shots fired, recorded on a cell phone. Just after 10 a.m. Friday, police say a 37-year-old woman walked into the South Cooper Street location with a gun and opened fire on a man she had been dating as he got a haircut.
After shooting William, Michelle made a decision to take her own life, completing the murder-suicide that would leave their child orphaned and 2 families destroyed. Her final act eliminated any possibility of understanding her motivations, receiving justice for William, or finding any path toward healing for the people affected by her actions. The immediate aftermath of the shooting created a scene of terror and confusion in the salon. Staff members and clients who had been going about their ordinary business suddenly found themselves in the middle of a crime scene, traumatized by violence they had witnessed but could not prevent. Emergency responders arrived to find 2 people dead and multiple witnesses struggling to process what they had just experienced. The routine call about shots fired at a salon had become a double fatality that would require extensive investigation and ongoing support for everyone who had been present. Police officers trained to handle domestic violence situations found themselves dealing with the ultimate escalation, a case where the victim had no opportunity to seek help and the perpetrator had eliminated herself along with her target. The crime scene investigation would be straightforward in terms of determining what happened, but the why would remain forever unanswered. Both William Todd Austin and Michelle Williams were pronounced dead at the scene, ending not just their lives, but also their child's access to both parents. The little one, who had been the best product of their relationship, was now left to grow up without either parent, raised by extended family members who would have to explain why mommy and daddy were gone. The salon and spa Galleria, which had been a place of beauty and relaxation just hours earlier, was now a crime scene that would require extensive cleaning and emotional healing before it could return to normal operations. The staff and clients who had been present would need counseling and support to process the trauma they had experienced. The Dallas business community that had celebrated William's success now mourned his loss, while struggling to understand how a relationship could deteriorate to such a devastating conclusion. The credit repair guru who had helped so many people rebuild their lives had been killed by someone who couldn't rebuild her own life after their relationship ended. March 11th, what had started as an ordinary Tuesday, ended as one of the most tragic days in the recent history of Arlington, Texas. 2 lives were lost. A child was orphaned, and multiple families were left to grieve and try to make sense of a senseless act of violence. The story of William Todd Austin and Michelle Williams serves as a stark reminder that domestic violence can escalate quickly and fatally, often in ways that leave no opportunity for intervention or prevention. Their tragedy will become a cautionary tale about the deadly potential of relationships that become obsessive and controlling. The tragic deaths of William Todd Austin and Michelle Williams offer painful but important lessons about domestic violence, relationship dynamics, and the warning signs that too often go unrecognized until it's too late. Their story serves as a stark reminder that domestic violence doesn't always follow predictable patterns and can escalate to fatal levels even in relationships that appear successful from the outside. One of the most crucial lessons from this tragedy is that domestic violence can affect people from all walks of life, regardless of their education, financial success, or social standing. William was a respected business owner who had built a thriving company and achieved financial stability. Michelle was his business partner and the mother of his child. From the outside, they appeared to be a successful couple building a life together. Yet beneath the surface, dangerous dynamics were developing that would ultimately prove fatal. The intersection of romantic and business relationships created unique vulnerabilities in their situation. When partners become deeply intertwined professionally as well as personally, separation becomes exponentially more complicated. Michelle's identity had become so connected to William and their shared business that the prospect of losing both relationships felt existentially threatening to her. This case highlights the importance of recognizing when someone's emotional investment in a relationship has reached unhealthy levels. Michelle's inability to accept the end of their romantic relationship, combined with her extensive knowledge of William's daily routines and whereabouts, created a perfect storm for violence. The public nature of William's death, occurring in a busy salon during a routine appointment, demonstrates that domestic violence can strike anywhere at any time. The other clients and staff who witness this tragedy will carry emotional scars for the rest of their lives, reminding us that domestic violence affects not just the primary victims, but entire communities. The story of William and Michelle is a tragedy that didn't have to happen. With better recognition of warning signs, earlier intervention, and perhaps different choices along the way, 2 lives might have been saved and a child might still have both parents. Their story serves as both a memorial to lives lost too soon and a call to action for all of us to recognize and address domestic violence before it reaches its most deadly conclusion. Pastor Brode Perry.
Continuing coverage for you now this morning as the church community continues to heal. The woman accused of killing Memphis pastor Brode Perry will make her first court appearance later today.
Latasha Daniels is facing several charges this morning, including a murder charge. This is in Collierville from late Thursday night. Investigators are looking into a possible love triangle that turned sour.
This is the story of a man of faith who made very human mistakes, a professional helper who couldn't heal her own broken heart, and a wife who survived the unthinkable. Brode Perry had established himself as a respected figure in the Memphis faith community. As an executive pastor at Mississippi Boulevard Christian Church, one of Memphis's most prominent congregations, Perry carried significant responsibility and influence. His role wasn't just ceremonial. He was actively involved in the day-to-day operations of a church that served thousands of members and played a vital role in the community. Perry's ministry journey began in Little Rock, Arkansas, where he served as a pastor at St. Mark Baptist Church from 2014 to 2018. It was during these crucial years in Little Rock that the seeds of this tragedy were planted, though no one could have predicted where they would lead. Those who knew Perry described him as charismatic and dedicated to his calling. He had the ability to connect with people, offering guidance and comfort to those struggling with life's challenges. His sermons were thoughtful, his counseling compassionate, and his presence in the community substantial. He wasn't just a Sunday morning figure. He was someone people turned to during their darkest hours. Yet Perry was also undeniably human, with all the complexities and contradictions that humanity brings. The Memphis religious community was shaken to its core when news of Perry's death broke. Mississippi Boulevard Christian Church, a congregation with deep roots in the Memphis community, suddenly found itself grappling with the loss of a key leader under the most shocking circumstances imaginable. Members who had sought Perry's counsel, who had been baptized by him, who had counted on his spiritual guidance, were left to process not only grief, but confusion and betrayal. What made this particularly difficult for the community was the nature of the circumstances surrounding Perry's death. This wasn't random violence or a tragic accident. It was a result of choices and relationships that contradicted everything Perry publicly represented. The cognitive dissonance was overwhelming for many who looked up to him as a spiritual guide. Perry's story reflects the impossible standards we sometimes place on religious leaders. We expect them to be above human frailty, immune to temptation, and perfect in judgment. When they fail to meet these impossible standards, the fall can be devastating, not just for them, but for everyone who believed in them. The woman who would take Brode Perry's life wasn't a dangerous stranger lurking in the shadows. She was a 39-year-old professional with an impeccable reputation and a career dedicated to helping others. Latasha Daniels worked as a social worker in Little Rock, Arkansas, but her specialty made this case particularly chilling. She was an anger management counselor. Let that sink in for a moment. The woman who would commit murder in a fit of rage was literally paid to teach others how to control their anger. The irony is so profound, almost seems fictional. But the reality is that sometimes people who appear most in control are fighting the biggest battles behind closed doors. Daniels had built a successful career helping clients work through their emotional challenges. She understood the psychology of anger, the triggers that could send someone spiraling, and the techniques needed to regain control. Her colleagues respected her expertise, clients trusted her guidance, and her professional record was spotless. By all outward appearances, she was exactly the kind of person you want counseling you through difficult emotions. But there's a dark truth about helping professions that isn't often discussed. Those who choose to help others heal are sometimes trying to heal themselves. The line between professional competence and personal struggle can be thinner than anyone realizes. Daniels could teach others to manage their anger because she understood it intimately, perhaps more intimately than she ever let on. Those who knew Daniels professionally describe her as intelligent, articulate, and genuinely caring. She wasn't someone who appeared unstable or dangerous. She was a woman who had achieved professional success, commanded respect in her field, and seemed to have her life together. This makes what happened on April 4th, 2019, even more shocking. Understanding Daniels requires looking beyond her professional facade and considering the personal struggles she may have been hiding. Anger management specialists often become experts because they've wrestled with anger themselves. But knowing something intellectually and controlling it emotionally are two different things. When faced with devastating rejection, all of Daniel's professional knowledge became useless against overwhelming pain. The duality of her existence becomes clear when considering her final months. By day, she remained a competent professional, still counseling clients about managing emotions and making healthy choices. By night, she was likely consumed by thoughts of Brode Perry, replaying conversations, planning confrontations, and feeding an obsession that would ultimately destroy both their lives. Perhaps most tragically, Daniels had access to all the resources she needed to get help. She worked in mental health, understood the importance of seeking support, and had professional networks that could have provided intervention. But shame, pride, and fear of professional consequences often prevent helping professionals from seeking the help they desperately need. The paths of Brode's Perry and Latasha Daniels first crossed in Little Rock during Perry's tenure at St. Mark Baptist Church from 2014 to 2018. What began as a connection between a pastor and a professional woman evolved into something far more complex and ultimately devastating. Affairs rarely begin with the intention of destroying lives. They typically start with innocent interactions, shared conversations, emotional connections that feel harmless. For Perry and Daniels, there was likely intellectual and emotional compatibility that drew them together. The secrecy required by their relationship created an intense bond. Shared secrets create intimacy, and the knowledge that they were the only two people who knew the full truth made their relationship feel uniquely special. This secrecy, however, was also the poison that would eventually destroy them both. For Daniels, the relationship likely filled emotional voids she may not have recognized. For Perry, it represented rebellion against the suffocating expectations of his role, a way to feel human and flawed in a position that demanded perfection. But affairs built on secrecy carry their own problems. The relationship couldn't be integrated into their normal lives, existing instead in a bubble of stolen moments that became more intense precisely because it couldn't be normalized. The decision to end the affair likely came as Perry prepared for his move to Memphis in 2018. Perhaps the distance made maintaining the relationship impractical, or the weight of guilt finally became too much. Whatever his reasons, Perry chose to end their relationship and focus on his marriage and new position. For Daniels, Perry's decision triggered something far more dangerous than heartbreak. It unleashed an obsession that would consume her entirely. She likely experienced his decision not just as the end of a relationship, but as fundamental rejection of her worth as a person. What followed were months of emotional torment. She replayed every conversation, analyzed every interaction, looking for hope or reasons for despair. The professional tools she used to help others became useless against overwhelming pain. The obsession began taking over her life. She likely found ways to monitor Perry's activities, staying connected to his world even though he cut her out. As months passed and Perry seemed to be moving on, Daniel's emotional state deteriorated. The dangerous mix of love, control, and abandonment issues created a perfect storm. She couldn't accept that the relationship was over, couldn't bear the thought of Perry being happy without her, and couldn't find a way to move forward with her own life. The days leading up to April 4th, 2019, were filled with escalating desperation for Latasha Daniels. Nearly a year had passed since Perry moved to Memphis and ended their relationship, but for Daniels, the pain was as fresh as ever. The decision to drive from Little Rock to Collierville wasn't made in sudden rage. It was calculated, requiring planning and determination. The 150-mile journey gave her plenty of time to reconsider, but Daniels was beyond rational thinking. She had convinced herself she needed to confront Perry, to make him understand what he had done to her. Daniels came armed. This wasn't spontaneous emotional outburst. It was premeditated violence. She had decided that if she couldn't get resolution through words, she was prepared to use force. The Meridian apartment in Collierville was where Perry and his wife had built their new life, a fresh start that became the setting for unthinkable tragedy. When Daniels arrived that evening, Perry's wife answered the door. Imagine the confusion and fear as she faced a woman she didn't recognize, demanding to see her husband with dangerous intensity. When Perry came to the door, he immediately recognized Daniels and understood the gravity of the situation. The conversation that followed was likely desperate pleas, angry accusations, and growing panic. Daniels sought acknowledgement of their relationship and validation of her pain. Perry, faced with his wife's presence and complete destruction of his new life, was probably focused on damage control. The moment when confrontation turned violent is burned into his wife's memory forever. At some point, Daniel's desperation and rage overpowered whatever restraint she had left. "You broke my heart," she screamed, and in those 4 words, we hear months of obsessive thinking, emotional torture, and building rage. This wasn't just about their affair's end. It was about every disappointment, every abandonment she had ever experienced. Perry had become the symbol of everything that had hurt her. The gunshots that followed shattered more than the apartment complex's quiet. They shattered lives, families, and communities. Perry was struck multiple times, dying in front of his helpless wife. But Daniels wasn't finished. In her rage, she also shot Perry's wife, though not fatally. Daniels didn't try to flee. The woman who had planned this confrontation seemed to collapse emotionally once the violence was over. The anger that had sustained her was gone, replaced by dawning realization of what she had done. When police arrived, they found devastating violence and emotional wreckage. Perry was dead, his wife wounded and in shock, and Daniels was present with the weapon nearby. The arrest of Latasha Daniels marked the beginning of a complex legal process. Initial charges reflected the severity: first-degree murder for Perry's death, attempted murder for shooting his wife, and additional weapon-related charges. These carried potential for life in prison or even death penalty. What followed in the courtroom was almost as disturbing as the crime itself. Daniels' behavior during court appearances revealed a woman struggling with reality. Reports describe her alternately smiling, crying, and at one point, blowing kisses, behavior suggesting severe mental illness or complete disconnect from her situation's severity. This bizarre courtroom behavior raised questions about Daniels' mental state and competency to stand trial. The woman, who had been a respected professional, was displaying behavior that seemed erratic and inappropriate for someone facing murder charges. The prosecution focused on the crime's premeditated nature. They emphasized that Daniels had made conscious decisions to drive from Little Rock to Memphis, to bring a weapon, to carry out a planned attack. Her emotional state didn't excuse the violence. The defense faced the difficult task of humanizing someone who had committed an inhuman act. They had to help the jury understand psychological factors leading to crime without excusing it, balancing acknowledgement of Daniels' professional background with explaining how someone with her training could act so violently. The case raised complex questions about whether Daniels' professional knowledge made her more or less culpable. Did her training mean she should have known better, or did it provide insight into psychological factors leading to the crime?
We are still in the information gathering stage. I certainly have talked to Ms. Daniels. Unfortunately, and not unsurprisingly, I can't tell you what I know. And so at this point, we just are continuing with our not guilty plea, absolutely. We come back May 14th. That is a probable cause or preliminary hearing. It is not a trial. The state has to put on proof.
For Perry's wife, legal proceedings represented another trauma layer. She had to deal with physical and emotional aftermath while facing public revelation of her husband's affair and the complex emotions of being both victim and someone betrayed by the other victim. The Memphis community struggled to process what happened to their pastor. Some rallied around his memory, focusing on ministerial work rather than personal failings. Others felt betrayed, struggling to reconcile faith with reality of their pastor's actions. This heartbreaking story teaches us profound lessons about the destructive power of deception in relationships. Perry's affair wasn't just betrayal of marriage vows. It was the first domino in a chain of events that would ultimately cost him his life and devastate everyone around him. Affairs don't exist in isolation. They create webs of deception that trap everyone involved and often spiral beyond anyone's control. The case highlights particular dangers when affairs involve people in helping professions. Both Perry and Daniels were in positions where they were expected to help others navigate emotional challenges, yet they were unable to manage their own emotional situations effectively. The irony is devastating. Two people professionally equipped to handle relationship problems created a situation that spiraled completely out of control. For Daniels, this serves as a tragic example of how professional expertise doesn't provide immunity from personal demons. She spent her career teaching anger management, but couldn't apply those techniques to her own overwhelming emotions. Her story reminds us that knowledge and application are two very different things, especially when we're in the grip of powerful emotions. One of the most important lessons is about recognizing warning signs of dangerous obsession. Daniels didn't become violent overnight. There was likely a months-long process of escalating obsessive thinking, emotional dysregulation, and planning that preceded the crime. Understanding these warning signs could potentially prevent similar tragedies in the future. The obsessive thinking that consumed Daniels is more common than many people realize, but it rarely escalates to violence. However, when it does, the results can be devastating. Learning to recognize when heartbreak has crossed the line into dangerous obsession, and knowing how to seek help when it does, could save lives. This case raises important questions about supporting people in helping professions during personal crises. The expectation that professional helpers should have their lives under control can prevent them from seeking help when they need it most. Creating better support systems for people in these roles could prevent similar tragedies. The story illustrates the importance of healthy relationship skills and emotional regulation. Both Perry and Daniels made choices that escalated rather than de-escalated their emotional situation. Learning how to end relationships respectfully, process rejection healthily, and seek appropriate support during emotional crises are life skills everyone needs. For communities of faith, this case raises difficult questions about supporting religious leaders while maintaining accountability. The pedestal we place spiritual leaders on can be both elevating and isolating, creating pressure that sometimes leads to exactly the behavior we're trying to prevent. This tragedy reminds us that emotional pain must be processed in healthy ways. Daniel's pain was real. The heartbreak, abandonment, feeling discarded were genuine emotions deserving acknowledgement and healing. But her choice to respond with violence transformed her from trauma victim to perpetrator of devastating violence. The case also highlights a particular vulnerability of helping professionals to burnout, emotional exhaustion, and personal crisis. People who spend careers managing others' emotional problems may neglect their own mental health needs. Creating better support systems, reducing stigma around seeking help, and recognizing signs of professional burnout could prevent similar tragedies. One of the most painful aspects is how preventable this seems in retrospect. Warning signs were there, resources for help were available, and knowledge of what was happening was present. Yet the combination of pride, shame, fear, and obsession created a perfect storm no one could stop. This case serves as a reminder that mental health crises can affect anyone, regardless of profession, education, or apparent stability. Daniels wasn't a stereotypical criminal. She was an educated professional with a successful career and reputation for helping others. Her transformation from helper to killer reminds us that we all have capacity for both great good and terrible destruction. For survivors of similar situations, this case provides both cautionary tale and message of hope. Perry's wife survived both physical attack and emotional trauma of learning about her husband's affair. Her journey toward healing represents resilience of human spirit and possibility of moving forward even after unimaginable tragedy. The tragedy of April 4th, 2019, reminds us that our choices have consequences extending far beyond ourselves. A secret affair, broken heart, and moment of deadly rage created ripple effects impacting multiple communities years later. The lives lost and damaged at night can never be restored, but perhaps by understanding what went wrong, we can work to prevent similar tragedies. This case challenges us to be more honest in relationships, more proactive in seeking help when needed, and more aware of warning signs indicating when someone is moving from emotional distress to dangerous behavior. It reminds us that professional competence doesn't equal personal immunity, that secrets can become toxic, and that people who appear most stable may be fighting the biggest battles behind closed doors. Most importantly, it reminds us of our shared humanity, our capacity for both love and destruction, our need for connection and healing, and our responsibility to care for one another in ways that prevent rather than enable tragedy. The story of Brode's Perry, Latasha Daniels, and the wife who survived them both is ultimately about all of us, about the choices we make, the pain we carry, and the hope that we can learn to do better. The murders of William, Todd, Austin, and Pastor Brode's Perry reveal a disturbing pattern in modern violence. The invasion of our most trusted spaces by people from our most intimate circles. Austin was killed by a former romantic partner in the public space where he sought routine grooming. Perry was murdered by a former congregant in the private space where he offered spiritual counsel. Both men died in environments where they had every reason to feel secure. These cases force us to confront an uncomfortable reality. There is no truly safe space when personal relationships turn deadly. The salon, the home, the church, all can become crime scenes when trust is weaponized. Both killers were women who had previous relationships with their victims, challenging assumptions about who commits violence and where it occurs. Austin's entrepreneurial success couldn't protect him from domestic violence spilling into public. Perry's spiritual calling couldn't shield him from a congregant's twisted sense of betrayal. As we examine these tragedies together, we see that violence doesn't respect boundaries, not profession, location, or relationship. The lesson isn't that we should trust no one or venture nowhere, but that we must remain vigilant even in our most comfortable spaces. Both men were simply living their lives, one building businesses, one building faith, when their past relationships caught up with them in the most devastating way possible. Their deaths remind us that safety is often an illusion, and that the people closest to us sometimes pose the greatest danger.